Some nights, the world feels too still, as if every sound has drifted into the distance, and only the faint pulse of the earth remains. That pulse is what we call a river. Tonight, as you close your eyes and let your breathing slow, imagine that each inhale is the mountain snow melting, and each exhale is the stream finding its way through stone. The earth is breathing beneath you, and you are part of that breath. Long before people built cities or named continents, water began its endless journey. Rain fell on newborn mountains. Tiny drops gathered into trickles. Trickles met and became streams, and the first rivers traced their signatures across the planet's skin. Scientists call this process fluvial sculpting, but it is in essence the handwriting of time. The Mississippi, the Nile, the Amazon, each is a sentence written by gravity and patience, telling the story of how the world learned to flow. A river begins when gravity finds opportunity. Meltwater from glaciers or rain from clouds searches for the lowest path. Minute by minute, the water wears down, rock carrying grains of ancient mountains into valleys below. Over thousands of years, these small movements carve canyons so vast they can be seen from space. The Grand Canyon is the Earth's memory of a single river, the Colorado, patiently cutting its way through 2 billion years of stone. When you think of how slow that is, your pulse begins to mimic it, and slowness becomes comfort. Rivers are not just channels of water. They are living systems that breathe oxygen into the planet. They circulate nutrients, carry sediments, and transport dissolved minerals that feed the oceans. They are the veins of the biosphere, linking forest to sea mountain to delta. When biologists study a river, they listen to its chemistry. The amount of oxygen dissolved in the water determines how many fish can breathe there. The pH balance decides what plants can root along its banks. Every variable is a note in the Earth's quiet symphony. There is a word scientists use, meander, that describes how rivers guave and wander. The term comes from the Meander River in ancient Anatolia, famous for its twists and turns. A meandering river never moves in straight lines. It loops gracefully, cutting one bank while depositing soil on the other. Over centuries, it changes its course again and again, leaving behind oxbow lakes crescent-shaped pools where water rests before rejoining the main current. These still waters are like the pauses between thoughts, the moments when the mind, having traveled far circles, back to itself. Rivers show that motion and rest are not opposites, but partners. They remind us that stillness can exist inside movement, just as you can find peace even while the world continues around you. When engineers study fluid dynamics, they describe laminar flow, a smooth, even movement, without turbulence, as the most efficient state. But nature rarely stays laminar for long. Eddies form currents, collide small whirlpools, dance in sunlight. Chaos, it turns out, is part of beauty. Even disorder has rhythm. There are more than 165 major rivers on Earth and millions of smaller streams. The Amazon alone discharges enough water into the Atlantic each day to fill nearly 8 million Olympic-sized swimming pools. Yet every drop in that vast flood begins as a single bead of rain striking a leaf. The scale of a river teaches humility. The grandest currents are made from the smallest beginnings. You too are made of beginnings, the quiet decisions, the unnoticed breaths that accumulate into a life. Science tells us that rivers create microclimates along their paths. The moisture in the air cools nearby forests. Fog forms in the early morning and shelters young plants from harsh sunlight. In the evenings, that same moisture settles as dew, coating leaves with a mirror of the sky. This gentle exchange stabilizes temperature and invites diversity. Wherever rivers flow, life multiplies. Every continent's green heart beats near water. Some rivers are older than the mountains they cut through. The Nile, for example, has followed roughly the same course for more than 30 million years, surviving shifts of continents and climates. Imagine a flow so patient it outlives civilizations. Pharaohs built tombs along its banks. Explorers traced its source. Satellites now map its delta. Yet the Nile itself has never hurried. It knows that all destinations wait. In its slowness lies a kind of wisdom, the same wisdom your body rediscovers when you surrender to rest. In North America, the Colorado River carved not only canyons, but entire cultures. Indigenous tribes lived by its rhythms, planting crops when floods receded, and telling stories that honored its power. Modern scientists measure discharge rates sediment load, and evaporation loss, but the essence remains the same. The relationship between flow and life. If you ever stand beside a river at night, listen closely. Beneath the audible current, there is a deeper vibration, a frequency of continuity that reassures every living thing nearby. It says, keep moving, but never rush. Rivers also travel underground. Beneath deserts and limestone plateaus lie hidden waterways, aquifers that have flowed in darkness for thousands of years. These unseen rivers remind scientists that most of Earth's fresh water is invisible, stored beneath our feet. Some of these aquifers hold fossils of ancient rainfall water that fell before humans existed. When we drink from a well, we taste time itself. Rivers breathe carbon dioxide and release oxygen through algae and aquatic plants. They are part of the planet's carbon cycle, capturing greenhouse gases and moderating climate. The Amazon's tributaries alone sequester millions of tons of carbon each year, a quiet contribution to the planet's balance. The next time you hear rain against your window, remember that the river begins again in that sound in each drop, choosing gravity over sky. At night, when the air cools, rivers generate fog that drifts over fields and forests. This fog slows the loss of heat from the ground, acting like a blanket. In the same way, a calm mind preserves warmth inside the body. Relaxation is the mental version of fog. It covers everything. Harsh, softening the edges until the landscape of thought becomes gentle again. Neuroscientists studying sleep have found that listening to natural water sounds lowers cortisol and synchronizes alpha brain waves, the rhythm associated with calm wakefulness that precedes deep rest. Your brain, in other words, recognizes rivers as peace. The oldest word for river in many languages shares a root with to run or to flow. In Latin, fluere. In Sanskrit, sravati. In Old English, wreath. The sound of each word mimics movement, an echo of motion built into language. Even the word stream stretches like water. Perhaps that's why we find comfort in whispering these words. They mimic the sounds our ancestors heard when the world was young. Scientists have discovered that river deltas act as natural filters. Sediments trap heavy metals. Wetlands absorb excess nutrients, and mangroves at river mouths protect coastlines from erosion. The delta is where the river gives itself away, completely merging with the sea. It is the end and the beginning. In human terms, it is the moment when effort dissolves into acceptance, when you stop trying to reach sleep and allow sleep to reach you. Some facts about rivers feel almost mythic. The Congo River, though shorter than the Nile, carries more water than any other in Africa and drops nearly 220 meters at one point, creating rapids so powerful that they have their own micro-weather. The Yangtze sustains more than 400 million people and dozens of endemic species. The Volga, Europe's longest river, freezes so solid in winter that trucks can drive across it. These are scientific facts, yet each contains poetry, power, balanced by patience. In the northern tundra, rivers thaw for only a few months each year. Scientists call them ephemeral rivers. Their brief flow is enough to sustain entire ecosystems of moss insects and migratory birds. Ephemeral does not mean unimportant. It means intensely alive in limited time. Every season of your life has such rivers moments that appear briefly, do their quiet work, and disappear. Recognizing them brings gratitude, and gratitude slows the heartbeat. Rivers have inspired artists and physicists alike. Leonardo da Vinci filled notebooks with sketches of eddies and vortices, observing that the patterns of water resemble curls of hair and spirals of smoke. Modern physicists later confirmed his intuition. Turbulence follows universal mathematical laws known as Kolmogorov scaling. Even chaos, when seen from above, has order. The same could be said for thought before sleep, disorganized on the surface, harmonious in its depth. As the night deepens, picture a single river winding across the continents, connecting every sea lake and droplet on Earth. In truth, all water is part of one global circulation. The molecules in your blood may once have flowed through the Amazon or frozen in an Arctic glacier. When scientists trace the isotopes of hydrogen and oxygen in rainwater, they can identify its birthplace. You are in a measurable sense built from ancient rivers, and now, as you rest, imagine yourself lying beside one. The air is cool. The sound of flowing water matches the rhythm of your breathing. The stars above shimmer on the surface, and for a moment, the sky and river become one mirror. You have reached the stillness inside motion. The earth breathes. You breathe. Nothing more is required. The story of rivers is also the story of time. Every drop that moves through a valley is a memory of something that fell long ago, perhaps on a distant mountain where snow turned to liquid sunlight. Scientists studying isotopic signatures can tell the age of a single molecule of water. Some molecules, now floating in the Mississippi, first evaporated from the Pacific Ocean decades ago. Others began their journey in glaciers that melted after the last ice age, 10,000 years before a single human word was written. You are listening tonight to the sound of time made liquid. Rivers are not only paths, they are storytellers. Each bend, each sediment layer holds a record of the world's changes. When geologists cut a cross-section through a river delta, they find thin stripes of clay and sand stacked like pages of a diary. Lighter layers show floods. Darker layers mark droughts. Ancient pollen trapped inside tells which trees once grew nearby. Reading a riverbed is reading history written in minerals and silence. As you drift deeper into calm picture the Amazon basin, the world's largest drainage system, covering more than 6 million square kilometers. If the Amazon were a body, each tributary would be a vein, each mangrove a lung, each rainstorm a heartbeat. The river's width near its mouth exceeds 24 miles, and at its deepest point, it sinks almost 330 feet. Scientists have discovered that the Amazon actually has a twin, an underground river flowing hundreds of meters below, moving slowly through porous rock. It is called the Hamza River, invisible yet immense. Even below the surface, Earth keeps breathing. Rivers are masters of balance. Hydrologists call their natural rhythm the hydrograph, the curve showing how water levels rise and fall through the seasons. During floods, the river swells. During dry months, it retreats. This pattern sustains wetlands, replenishes groundwater, and keeps ecosystems alive. When we dam or divert rivers, we flatten those curves, and nature loses her rhythm. Yet even in engineered channels, water remembers how to move. When barriers break, the old paths reappear, as if the river had been dreaming of them all along. The sound you imagine when you think of a river, that continuous hush, is the music of turbulence. Fluid dynamics explains that as water tumbles over rocks, it creates pressure, fluctuations that our ears interpret as white noise. White noise masks sudden sounds, letting the brain relax. That is why so many people fall asleep to recordings of water. The physics of sound meets the biology of rest. Your mind, like a pebble, settles to the bottom when the current is constant. Across the globe, certain rivers define entire civilizations. The Ganges in India is considered sacred, a living goddess whose waters are believed to cleanse the soul. The Yangtze in China has nurtured agriculture and culture for thousands of years, serving as both road and refuge. The Danube weaves through 10 European nations, carrying stories in a dozen languages. The Mississippi, whose name comes from an Ojibwe word meaning great river, is a thread of memory running through a continent's heart. When you say their names softly, Ganges, Yangtze, Danube, Mississippi, they sound almost like lullabies. Every river begins small. A single raindrop lands on soil, seeps downward, meets another, and together they form a rivulet. That rivulet becomes a stream. In hydrology, scientists call this the law of increasing order. Small systems merge to form larger, more complex ones. Life follows the same rule. Neurons form networks. People form communities. Rivers form worlds. Complexity in this sense is the natural direction of flow. As you listen, imagine your own thoughts merging like these streams, finding a calm, wide channel within you. Rivers shape not only land, but also sky. Evaporation from their surfaces sends moisture back into the atmosphere, where it condenses into clouds that travel and fall again as rain. This water cycle is the planet's unending breath. Without rivers, clouds would wander, empty oceans would rise unbalanced, and forests would fade. Every inhale you take tonight mirrors that ancient exchange: oxygen from trees, carbon from your lungs, moisture from rivers, all circling endlessly in invisible harmony. Under moonlight, a river becomes a ribbon of mirrors. The shimmer you see is light scattering off ripples, each ripple tilted at a slightly different angle. Physicists call it specular reflection. Poets call it silver fire. Either way, it reminds us that beauty often hides inside small irregularities. Smooth water reflects only one image. Rippled water multiplies the stars. Rivers teach a subtle form of resilience. When a tree falls across a current, the water divides, slips around, and rejoins itself downstream. When rocks block the path, the river carves new channels. Scientists call this adaptive morphology, the capacity of water systems to reorganize without losing flow. In psychology, resilience means much the same. The ability to keep moving while changing form. You can be shaped without being stopped. Some of the most fascinating research in modern ecology focuses on the microbiome of rivers. Beneath every surface lies a community of bacteria, algae, and microfauna working in unison to recycle nutrients. Each teaspoon of river water can contain millions of living cells, unseen but essential. They clean, balance, and renew. When the current seems silent, it is actually humming with invisible cooperation. Sleep works this way too. Beneath your stillness, countless biological processes restore you unseen but essential. At dusk, riverbanks glow with bioluminescent insects in some parts of the world. In Malaysia and the Amazon, fireflies synchronize their flashes like a breathing rhythm. Scientists studying these displays found that each insect adjusts its timing slightly to match the group until an entire forest pulses in unison. The synchronization of light along water edges is one of nature's most mesmerizing phenomena. A collective heartbeat written in photons. Watching it time seems to slow. Listening to this story, your heartbeat does the same. Temperature changes the tone of a river's song. Cold water moves faster and carries sound differently than warm water. The pitch rises in spring. Snowmelt deepens in summer heat. Each season has its melody. If you could translate your life into sound, it would shift like this higher in moments of discovery, lower in moments of rest. Tonight's tone is deep and steady, the sound of a river in late summer, carrying the weight of long days toward a patient sea. The world's shortest river, the Roe River in Montana, flows only 201 feet before joining the Missouri. The longest, the Nile, runs more than 4 to 100 miles. Yet in the language of the planet, both are sentences of equal meaning. Each completes a thought in water. As you lie here, your breath short or long, quick or slow, remember, meaning doesn't depend on length. It depends on flow. The Mississippi carries more than 90 million tons of sediment each year, building its delta grain by grain. Sediment is memory crushed. Stone, dissolved roots, fragments of mountains and shells. When you sleep, your mind performs a similar act, sifting through the debris of the day, depositing what is needed, washing the rest away. Morning arrives as a new delta, fertile and unburdened. Rivers even influence the Earth's rotation. The redistribution of water from melting ice and sediment movement slightly alters the planet's moment of inertia, changing the length of a day by microseconds. Scientists measure this with satellites and marvel that something so vast can be affected by something so soft. Tiny adjustments, invisible corrections. This is how balance is maintained on cosmic scales. This is how you maintain yours now between waking and sleep. When night creatures approach, rivers deer, to drink frogs, to sing herons, to hunt, a temporary truce settles over the landscape. Predator and prey share the same need for water. For a few minutes, peace exists without negotiation. The reflection of the moon becomes their shared truth. Imagine that peace extending through you, the edges of self softening until you too are simply part of the flow. If you listen closely to the science of rivers, you begin to hear philosophy, motion without hurry, strength without hardness, transformation without loss. Water teaches all of this silently. It doesn't preach. It demonstrates. To sleep beside such a teacher is to learn by osmosis the way roots learn the shape of soil. You absorb calm simply by being near it. Now breathe slowly again. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Feel the current of air move through you as the river moves through its valley. Every breath smooths the rough edges of the mind. The river continues. So do you. If you ever walk beside a river at dawn, you'll notice how words become unnecessary. The murmuring current carries its own conversation, older than language and softer than thought. Hydrologists describe this motion in equations, but the essence is simpler. The river speaks in rhythms, not sentences. Every eddy is a comma, every bend a pause. To listen is to remember how to breathe. The first humans who followed rivers didn't have maps. They read direction by sound, the distant rush that meant water was near. Archaeologists have found that nearly every ancient settlement sits within 10 miles of a fresh water source. Science explains why water meant food transport and safety. But there is another reason, less measurable. People felt calmer where things moved, but never hurried. The river's pace became the model for daily life. Even today, MRI studies show that viewing slow-moving water lowers activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. Fear quiets when flow replaces noise. Inside a river, countless small worlds exist. Biologists studying macroinvertebrates, stoneflies, mayflies, caddisflies, use their presence to measure purity. If these delicate creatures thrive, the water is clean. If they vanish, pollution has arrived. Thus, a single insect can serve as an environmental instrument, as precise as any laboratory probe. The lesson extends beyond ecology. Sensitivity is not weakness. It is how life detects imbalance and restores harmony. Farther downstream, the current grows heavier with memory. Particles from mountains thousands of miles apart mingle here. Each grain of silt holds a story of pressure, heat, and time. Geologists date them by mineral composition, tracing journeys older than rivers themselves. When you close your eyes tonight, imagine those particles settling in slow spirals around you, the weight of history softening into comfort. Water, at its essence, is a shapeshifter. It expands when frozen, dissolves almost anything, and erodes the hardest rock. Chemists call it the universal solvent. Philosophers might call it the universal teacher. In laboratory terms, cohesion allows droplets to stick to one another. Adhesion lets them cling to other surfaces. That dual ability, connection, and flexibility is exactly what keeps a river intact. The molecules that refuse separation are the same that allow transformation. Connection without rigidity. The quiet formula for peace. Rivers also generate sound below our hearing. Hydrophones dropped into deep currents record low-frequency vibrations that travel for miles. Whales and fish use these tones as navigation guides, a kind of underwater map written in resonance. When researchers convert those frequencies into audible ranges, the recordings resemble slow heartbeats. The planet is literally pulsing through its waterways. Listening to them, one realizes that calm is not silence. It is rhythm, aligned with purpose. Consider the Colorado Plateau, where narrow canyons funnel water into patterns of polished stone. Over eons, minerals leach into the flow iron, staining walls, red copper, turning them green. Spectroscopy confirms that these pigments shift subtly with humidity, meaning the canyon changes color with the weather. Nature paints in real time, and water is the brush. Each drop erases and rewrites. You too repaint yourself nightly in sleep, washing the mind's surface. Clean for another day's design. Some rivers reverse direction with the tide. In the Amazon's lower reaches, seawater pushes inland twice a day, creating a tidal bore called the pororoca. Surfers ride it for miles, balanced on a crest that moves both upstream and down. Physicists describe the pororoca as a standing wave where opposing forces cancel speed, but not energy. The wave remains while motion dissolves. Meditation works the same way. Thoughts rise and fall. Yet awareness itself stays unmoving beneath the turbulence. Rivers have fingerprints. Remote sensing satellites use multispectral imaging to identify each by its unique combination of minerals, vegetation, and temperature. From orbit, scientists can tell the Mekong from the Mississippi by color alone. The Earth's surface glows with these luminous veins, proof that motion is beauty, visible from space. When astronauts describe their first sight of home, they speak not of continents, but of shining blue lines, the living script of water. As you listen, now imagine zooming outward. See entire continents wrapped in ribbons of light flowing toward oceans that reflect the stars. Each river is an artery, each cloud a sigh. Somewhere inside that global pattern, your own body echoes the same geometry, a heart sending blood through branching vessels, returning again to its center. Biology repeats geography. The macro mirrors the micro. The pulse inside your chest is one with the pulse of rivers. Scientists call this pattern fractal symmetry. the repetition of similar shapes at different scales. River networks follow the same mathematical ratios as leaf veins, lightning bolts, and neurons. It is as if the universe prefers one design, branching paths that carry energy efficiently from core to edge. When you feel overwhelmed by complexity, remember that even chaos obeys structure. Flow is never random. It only looks that way close up. Beneath the calm surface, physics and poetry meet. Bernoulli's principle, which governs how pressure decreases as velocity increases, explains why birds glide low over water. The fast air above their wings lifts them effortlessly. That invisible lift is the same principle that keeps your mind buoyant when you surrender tension. Release resistance, and the current supports you. Night deepens. The air cools. Somewhere beyond imagination, glacier, melt begins another descent. The first trickle finds a path through moss and stone. It doesn't know where it will go, only that downward is inevitable. That surrender, pure, unhurried, unquestioning, is the secret every river keeps. Follow it, and you will sleep, as the earth sleeps aware, yet utterly at rest. Every river begins as something nameless, and in that anonymity there is freedom. Before it gathers enough strength to carve through valleys or feed forests, it is simply movement, liquid curiosity, searching for direction. Scientists trace the origins of the first rivers back nearly 4 billion years, when volcanic rain fell onto a newborn crust. The surface was hot, the air heavy with steam, and the water that touched it hissed into clouds again. Over millennia, as the planet cooled, raindrops began to survive their fall. They pooled, joined, and ran downhill. The first rivers were born not from force, but from persistence. As continents shifted, they carried their rivers with them. Geologists mapping plate tectonics have found fossil riverbeds running through the heart of deserts, relics of ancient climates now long gone. The Sahara, once a sea of green, still hides channels beneath its dunes, dry arteries carved by streams that vanished tens of thousands of years ago. Using radar, scientists can see these ghost rivers branching across the sand like memories of rainfall. The earth forgets nothing. It simply waits. To understand a river's patience, consider how it measures time. Human calendars count days, but rivers count freezes and thaws. Each winter adds a layer of ice. Each spring removes it. Over centuries, these cycles deepen valleys and smooth stones until they fit perfectly in the palm of your hand. In northern Canada, hydrologists study permafrost melt and call it cryospheric breathing. Ice exhales water. The land inhales calm. It is again the planet's slowest breath. Flow creates life, but it also carries it away. Marine scientists have discovered that up to 40% of the nutrients feeding coastal ecosystems come from river discharge. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon drift from forest to ocean, fueling plankton, blooms that in turn sustain fish and whales. Even the vast Pacific depends on small streams hidden in mountain fog. There is a quiet generosity in this exchange. The highlands give, so the lowlands may live. What you release nourishes elsewhere. Some rivers have been worshipped for this generosity. The Ganges in India, the Jordan in the Middle East, the Tiber in ancient Rome all became symbols of purification and renewal. When pilgrims step into their waters, they reenact the planet's own cycle of washing and returning. Science calls it hydrology. Faith calls it forgiveness. In both, the act is the same. Let go of what no longer serves and trust that gravity will carry it away. In the Amazon basin, rainfall is recycled by the trees themselves. Each leaf releases moisture through tiny pores called stomata, forming clouds that drift and fall again within the same region. Scientists call this flying rivers, invisible streams of vapor connecting forest to sky. Cut the forest, and the rain falters. Protect it, and the rhythm continues. The cycle depends not on one river, but on countless unseen breaths. So does your peace. Rivers also sculpt soundscapes. When air bubbles form in fast-moving water, they oscillate as they rise, creating frequencies between 100 and 1,000 hertz, the range most pleasing to the human ear. Acoustic ecologists record these frequencies to monitor river health. A healthy river sings in a balanced spectrum, neither too high nor too low. Stress in an ecosystem, such as pollution or drought, shifts the pitch upward. The world's balance can be heard if you listen closely enough. Tonight, as your own breathing steadies, notice the tone of your thoughts leveling into harmony. the great deltas of the world. Those fertile fans where rivers meet the sea are masterpieces of slow construction. The Nile Delta grows outward at only a few centimeters per year, but over millennia, it has built a plain large enough to feed entire civilizations. Every grain of silt there once traveled 1,000 miles. It's a lesson written in sediment. Small efforts sustained over time create abundance. Sleep, too, is built this way, minute by minute, layer by layer, until the mind becomes fertile again. Researchers at NASA have discovered that river channels on Mars mirror those on Earth. Though they are dry now, their patterns suggest liquid water once flowed there. In studying them, scientists glimpse a planetary parallel proof that the impulse to flow is universal. Whether on Earth or Mars, gravity writes the same poem in dust and ice. The universe seems to favor the idea of movement, finding rest. You are made of that same pattern, a wandering that always leads home. Beneath the Himalayas lies one of the most intricate river systems on Earth. The Brahmaputra winds through gorges so deep that sunlight touches their bottoms for only minutes each day. In those brief moments, mosses awaken, insects hum, and the world renews itself. Even in darkness, life waits for light. This is the secret most evident near rivers. No matter how long the night morning will return along the water's edge. Rivers are engineers without blueprints. They build deltas, dig valleys, and transport the raw materials of continents. The Mississippi once changed its course so completely that ancient channels now sit miles away from the modern river. To prevent new shifts, humans have lined its banks with levees, but water still searches for freedom. In 1973, during record floods, the Mississippi nearly switched paths again, seeking its forgotten route to the Gulf. We may guide nature for a while, but never forever. Flow always remembers its origin. From a biochemical view, the smell of a river, the earthy sweetness after rain, comes from a compound called geosmin, produced by soil bacteria. Humans can detect it at concentrations lower than 1 part per trillion. It's the most sensitive smell we possess, perhaps because it connects us directly to survival. The scent tells us water is near. When you sense calm listening to rain or running water, it isn't imagination, it's memory. Evolution has tied safety to that sound. At night, When moonlight ripples across a river's surface, the photons bounce between moving waves before reaching your eyes. Each reflection carries a time delay of microseconds, imperceptible but real. That means the light you see has already been touched by motion, softened by travel. The universe delivers everything this way, delayed just enough for you to receive it gently. The Amazon, the Nile, the Yangtze, each a world unto itself, remind scientists that diversity thrives along borders. Ecotones. The transition zones between water and land host more species per square mile than almost any other habitat. These edges, neither one thing nor another, are nature's favorite meeting points. If your life feels like such a border, half one season, half the next, remember that richness grows in transitions. The riverbank is proof. The deeper scientists study rivers, the more they realize that flow creates connection. A drop falling in the Andes can, through evaporation and rain, eventually become part of the Arctic Ocean. There is no isolation in water. The molecule that cools your forehead tonight might once have quenched the thirst of a dinosaur or polished the stone of a forgotten temple. You are sharing atoms with eternity. Now the sound of the river fades into your pulse. The day dissolves like silt. What remains is the slow, certain current of rest. Gravity does not rush, and neither should you. Let every thought drift downstream until only stillness remains. The earth continues its breathing, and tonight you breathe with it. Every current hides a pattern invisible to the eye, but written in the language of physics. Scientists call it the geometry of turbulence, the hidden order inside apparent chaos. When researchers film a river in slow motion, they see vortices spinning like galaxies, each one born from a collision of water layers moving at different speeds. These spirals, called von Karman vortices, repeat across scales, from smoke drifting in air to clouds swirling on Jupiter. The universe loves to copy itself. A river is not only water, it is a miniature cosmos turning endlessly within the principle of gravity and time. The human mind responds instinctively to this geometry. Studies in neuroaesthetics show that fractal patterns, like those in rivers' coastlines and tree branches, calm the visual cortex and slow heartbeat rhythm. The same mathematics that shapes a delta shapes your neural pleasure. This is why even a photograph of moving water can ease tension. Your brain recognizes its own wiring, mirrored in nature's design. You are looking at yourself in motion. Rivers write maps long before people do. Satellite imagery reveals dendritic networks that resemble veins, roots, and lightning. Each branch follows laws of branching ratio and angle that optimize efficiency, the least energy for the most reach. It's the same principle behind your lungs and circulatory system. To breathe, to live, to flow, these are not metaphors, but equations. When you relax into rhythm tonight, your body aligns with those universal laws, returning to the template it was built from. Some scientists model rivers as self-organizing systems. No single droplet decides direction. Yet together, they carve order out of randomness. That collective intelligence exists in many places, flocks of birds and colonies, even human crowds. But nowhere is it gentler than in water. Cooperation without argument, progress without noise. Imagine if thoughts behaved like this, each idea flowing naturally toward clarity instead of collision. Sleep is the mind's way of restoring that state, returning mental traffic to smooth current. Consider the Mekong winding through 6 countries, feeding millions. Its seasonal floods deposit nutrients that sustain entire economies. Hydrologists call this pulse the flood pulse concept, the predictable rise and fall that rejuvenates floodplains. It is in essence a heartbeat measured in months. When you lie down after a long day, your own body follows a smaller version of that cycle. Energy rising with action falling into rest, restoring everything it touches. You and the river share a pulse scaled by time. Light interacts with water in ways still not fully understood. Photons refract and scatter, producing the blue-green hues that make rivers shimmer. The exact color depends on suspended minerals. Glacial flour, turning streams, turquoise, volcanic ash, tinting them gray. Spectroscopy gives numbers to beauty, but numbers can't explain why those colors soothe us. Perhaps it's because our eyes evolved beside water. Peace is simply ancestral recognition. Deep in the Amazon, a phenomenon called the meeting of waters occurs where the Rio Negro and the Solimões flow side by side for miles, without mixing. One is dark acidic and cool, the other pale and warm. Their union forms a visible boundary, a living yin and yang drifting through the jungle. Chemically, it happens because of differences in temperature and density. Symbolically, it reminds us that harmony doesn't always mean blending. Two truths can flow together, distinct yet aligned. In the same way, wakefulness and sleep meet each night inside you, exchanging places without conflict. Rivers. Talk to the ocean through estuaries, half salt, half fresh. These regions act as nurseries for life. Shrimp crabs, juvenile fish, all shelter there. Marine biologists describe estuaries as buffers absorbing shock from storms and filtering pollutants before they reach open sea. The planet built its own immune system out of water. Humans are 60% water. Perhaps that's why tears cleanse more than eyes. They reset equilibrium. Tiny estuaries of emotion. When engineers design bridges, they study a property called resonance, the frequency at which vibrations amplify until structures sway. Water has its resonances, two standing waves that hum within narrow gorges, invisible to sight, but measurable by sensors. Some resonate at pitches below human hearing, subsonic lullabies that animals sense through bone and skin. Standing near such a river, you feel calm without knowing why. Your body hears what your ears cannot. Even time itself seems to slow around water. Psychologists testing attention spans found that people underestimate duration when exposed to flowing sounds. The brain's internal clock decelerates, syncing with fluid continuity. This gentle distortion is what you feel now, the minutes stretching like current, steady, endless. The day loses edges. Only motion remains. Downstream, where rivers widen into deltas, gravity finally meets surrender. Sediments settle. Currents fan into many mouths, and fresh water mingles with salt. The density difference creates a faint boundary layer that glows under moonlight. Sailors once navigated by it, calling it the Silver Road. It is the place where effort ends and belonging begins. Sleep, too, is a silver road, the meeting of consciousness and its vast ocean. Imagine that you are standing there now at the edge where the river opens to infinity. Behind you, mountains. Before you, horizon. You feel the last tug of current around your ankles, warm air above cool mist below. The sound is steady, but distant, like memory fading kindly. You take one more breath. The earth inhales with you and release. The current carries your thoughts outward, scattering them like petals on tide. In laboratories, scientists measure everything: velocity, salinity, turbidity. Yet what keeps them returning to rivers isn't data, it's wonder. Wonder is the gravity of curiosity. It pulls us toward understanding without ever letting us arrive. That is the real secret of flow: endless movement, never repetition. The same drop of water may circle the globe for millennia and still remain new. And as you drift deeper into stillness, the facts themselves become lullabies. Every equation whispers reassurance. Energy is conserved patterns. Repeat. Motion continues. Nothing is lost, only transformed. You are part of that continuity. The Earth's slow breathing, steady and sure. Some scientists believe that water carries memory. Not in the mystical sense, but in the literal structure of its molecules, the hydrogen bonds that break and reform trillions of times each second. These bonds create fleeting clusters, patterns that echo the surfaces they've touched. A drop of river water may contain microscopic traces of mountain stone forest pollen and the minerals of faraway seas. Each moment it reorganizes, yet the imprint of its journey lingers. If you could read the molecular script of a single drop, you might see the whole planet reflected there. When rain falls into a river, it does not erase the past. It expands it. Hydrologists tracing isotopes can follow the lineage of storms. Water vapor lifted from one continent becomes rain on another, feeding rivers thousands of miles away. The Nile holds whispers of equatorial monsoons. The Amazon drinks the breath of the Atlantic. The Mississippi begins as snowfall in Minnesota. Every stream is a thread in a single woven fabric. If you listen closely, you can hear the tapestry shifting its texture smooth as sleep. Rivers are archivists of climate. In their sediments lie records of drought and abundance, volcanic winters, and humid ages. Scientists core deep into deltas to study pollen and carbon layers, reconstructing centuries of weather from mere handfuls of mud. What they find is rhythm warming and cooling, flood and famine pulse and pause. The planet, like a heart, has always known when to beat faster and when to rest. Sleep is your echo of that wisdom, the brain's nightly flood and ebb, washing away waste proteins, nourishing new neural deltas for the dawn. In the still pools beside a river, algae weave delicate films that catch sunlight. Each cell transforms light into sugar, releasing oxygen back into the current. Without this quiet labor, no fish could breathe, no leaf could open. Biochemists call it photosynthesis, but the word feels too mechanical for something so tender. Imagine countless tiny artists painting the world's air, one molecule at a time. They never stop, never hurry. The pace of creation is slow, but infinite. There are rivers beneath the ocean, two dense flows of saline water sliding through trenches like invisible snakes of glass. The Mediterranean, for example, spills into the Atlantic through the Strait of Gibraltar, sinking beneath lighter water and forming a hidden current scientists call a submarine river. It moves in silence, sculpting valleys deep in darkness. Even in the absence of light, the planet remembers motion. In mythology, rivers often mark the boundary between worlds. The Greeks spoke of the Lethe, whose waters made souls forget their pain. In the Norse sagas, Yule separated the living from the dead. Psychologists studying sleep might agree to rest deeply is to cross a similar threshold, to dip into oblivion and emerge cleansed. Forgetting in the right measure is mercy. Every night, your consciousness surrenders to the same current, washing memory into calm clarity. Rivers define identity for every creature that touches them. Salmon navigate thousands of miles to return to the stream of their birth, guided by smell, an olfactory compass more accurate than any GPS. They leap waterfalls, dodge predators, and spend their final strength reaching the same gravel beds where their lives began. Biologists call it natal homing. Poets call it faith. The instinct to return home lives in water and in you. The word riverbank suggests stability, but even banks move. Aerial photographs taken decades apart show shorelines sliding sideways, meanders shifting like serpents. The process, called lateral migration, keeps landscapes alive. If a river never changed course, floodplains would dry, soils would thin, and life would vanish. Stability is not stillness, It is movement that renews. The same principle sustains your inner world. Thoughts drift, feelings shift, yet your essence remains the current beneath the change. In laboratories studying sound therapy, researchers found that playing recordings of gentle rivers reduced anxiety by up to 60%. The explanation lies in coherence. Repetitive, non-threatening sounds synchronize neural oscillations, aligning heartbeat and respiration. The brain entrains to calmness. You are in this moment performing that experiment on yourself. The words you hear become rhythm. The rhythm becomes breath, and breath becomes peace. Water's transparency hides its depth. Light penetrates only a few meters before scattering into darkness. But sensors reveal layers of temperature and density stacked like invisible glass. Limnologists drop probes into lakes and rivers to measure these gradients, calling them thermoclines. The deeper the probe descends, the slower the current, until movement nearly stops. Yet even there, in the coldest layers, life persists, tiny crustaceans glowing faintly, bacteria feeding on minerals from below. In stillness, vitality. In darkness, persistence. At the meeting of fresh and saltwater mangroves grow with roots that breathe air. They trap sediment, build soil, and protect coastlines from storms. Marine scientists call them keystone ecosystems because remove one root and an entire coast begins to crumble. Their trunks twist like question marks, each asking how life learns to adapt. You might ask the same of yourself. How do you root in uncertainty? How do you breathe in flood? The answer is written in wood and water. Bend, and you will not break. As night settles, fully imagine lying at the bottom of a clear stream. The surface above glimmers with stars refracted through water. Tiny fish drift past like sparks. Your thoughts slow to the pace of current. There is no past here, no future, only the present flowing endlessly. Scientists studying time perception call this state temporal dilation. Monks call it timelessness. Both are correct. To live in the present is to move with the river, not against it. Far downstream, sediment from every continent gathers at the ocean's mouth, blending into the sea. Oceanographers trace these minerals across the globe. Grains from the Ganges have been found on African shores. The earth, it seems, circulates itself. Nothing truly ends. It only changes residence. Even when water evaporates, it remains water, just rearranged, waiting to fall again. Transformation is continuity disguised as change. Somewhere in the dark, lightning strikes a mountain peak, splitting a rock. Rain seeps into the crack, freezes, and expands, widening the gap. Next spring, that stone will crumble into dust, join a stream, and begin a new journey toward the ocean. It will travel centuries to complete this descent, yet not once will it question direction. Gravity will guide it, and the river will welcome it. You are that stone now, softened by experience, carried gently toward rest. You have listened long enough to feel the difference between movement and rush, between noise and flow. The science of water becomes the science of yuo, equilibrium adaptation, quiet renewal. There is no resistance left, only current. The night is wide, the earth exhales. You are part of its breath, floating easily, effortlessly, endlessly. At night, the river does not sleep. It dreams. Scientists studying nocturnal flow have discovered that even when surface movement slows, subsurface currents continue weaving quietly through gravel and sand. They call this the hyporheic zone, a hidden network beneath the visible stream where water seeps in and out of soil, exchanging nutrients and oxygen. To fish eggs, resting there, this invisible world is everything. Shelter, warmth, protection. Beneath the noise of the day, a secret current keeps life alive. Inside you, something similar hums when the mind falls silent, the soft exchange of thought and rest energy and release. If we could talk, we would see constellations of silt swirling like galaxies. Microscopic plankton drift in spirals that mimic cosmic motion. Physicists analyzing these patterns find the same mathematical ratios in spiral arms of galaxies and in eddies of water only inches wide. Nature, from atom to universe, repeats its handwriting. It is as if the cosmos rehearses infinity in every drop. In places where two rivers meet, chaos becomes harmony. Hydrologists call it confluence, a joining that can change color, temperature, and chemistry all at once. The Amazon's meeting of waters is famous, but there are countless others. The Missouri, meeting the Mississippi, the Rhine meeting the Moselle. Each union tells the same story. Difference is destiny, not division. Even opposing currents can flow together toward one purpose. Within your thoughts, too, contradictions do not cancel, they complete. The rational and the emotional, the scientific and the spiritual, each needs the other to form a whole. Ancient civilizations understood this balance intuitively. The Egyptians saw the Nile not merely as water, but as the bloodstream of the gods. Every flood was divine heartbeat, every drought divine silence. In their hieroglyphs, the word for river meant both life and path. Modern satellite data confirm the wisdom hidden in that metaphor. Civilizations rise and fall according to water's rhythm. Abundance gathers around flow, and when flow ceases, life disperses. Energy, whether physical or spiritual, must move to stay alive. Rivers also mark time geologically. The Grand Canyon was carved by the Colorado River over 6 million years, cutting 1 hair's breadth deeper each year. In that patience lies a lesson about creation. Enduring transformation happens quietly. No explosion, no announcement, just persistence. Neuroscientists say the same about habit formation in the brain. New neural pathways are carved not by effort, but by repetition. Tiny, steady signals wearing smooth channels through thought. Every night you sleep, your brain refines those channels, shaping calm from chaos, the way water shapes stone. Even the river's meander, the lazy, looping bend that defines its beauty, has a formula. Mathematicians discovered that the ratio of the length of a river to the distance from source to mouth averages p, the same number that defines circles. Hidden geometry in a wandering path. The universe insists on elegance, even in imperfection. What appears random is secretly precise. Your own detours, too, form a pattern invisible until viewed from above. Sound behaves differently near water. Physicists measuring acoustic propagation found that humid air allows sound waves to travel farther, softening their edges. That's why voices by rivers feel closer, warmer, more intimate. The air itself carries tenderness. Perhaps this is why so many confessions, declarations, and farewells have been spoken by riversides. The air knows how to hold words gently before letting them go. In the Pacific Northwest, native tribes tell stories of rivers as living beings who remember kindness. When fishermen release the first catch back to the water, they do so with words of gratitude, believing the river will repay them with abundance. Anthropologists might label it superstition, but ecology calls it reciprocity. Give and the system stabilizes. Keep and balance collapses. The same rule applies to peace. It arrives only when you stop clutching it. Hydrologists use tracer dyes to study current speed. A few drops of harmless color are released upstream. Sensors record its progress. The fastest rivers carry the dye miles within minutes. The slowest may take days. Yet every particle eventually arrives. The color does not worry about distance. It simply flows. That too is faith in motion. Trust the current, and you will reach where you belong, even if you drift. In the deep basins of Asia, rivers vanish underground for hundreds of miles before resurfacing. They disappear into limestone travel, unseen, then rise again, clear as glass. Geologists call them karst systems, labyrinths of stone and echo. Sometimes you can hear the roar of a hidden torrent beneath your feet, proof that flow never stops, only changes form. When your life feels paused, remember this stillness often hides movement. Progress sometimes sounds like silence. Even within cities, rivers resist captivity. Engineers build walls, but floods remind them who truly rules the Thames, the Seine. The Han all have broken their barriers, returning to ancient paths when rains grow fierce. Water does not rebel, it remembers. Scientists studying floodplain dynamics say that rivers seek equilibrium. They are not angry, just honest. Everything eventually returns to balance, even if the route feels destructive. Healing often begins by undoing what confined you. As dawn nears, mist rises from the water. Microscopic droplets floating between worlds, neither liquid nor vapor. Meteorologists call this phase transition, but to the human heart, it feels like magic. The earth exhaling dreams. The smell of moisture, that faint sweetness of soil and air, is geosmin. Again, the same chemical that first told your ancestors where life could begin. the scent of safety, the breath of home. If you could hover above the river, now you would see it glowing faintly under moonlight, winding like a living pulse through the landscape. You would see villages asleep, forests leaning toward its whisper stones, shining softly beneath the surface. And in the hush, you would understand the river doesn't simply move through the world moves through it. Every drop that has ever existed still exists somewhere, just changed, just continuing. You are part of that movement, that continuity. The river dreams through you, and you through it. When you rest tonight, the earth completes its circuit of breathing. Inhale, rainfall. Exhale, flow. Nothing more is required. Nothing ever was. Far downstream, where the land gives way to the sea, the river slows until its movement feels like breathing. The tide pulls gently against it, neither winning nor losing, only blending fresh water and salt memory and mystery. Oceanographers call this point the estuarine boundary, but to the soul, it feels like reconciliation. Every journey leads here to the place where resistance ends and everything returns to everything. Above this quiet water, birds trace spirals in the air, their wings glinting like shards of morning. They follow invisible thermals rising from the surface, the same heat that once lifted mist from mountain springs. In that moment, air and water become indistinguishable, one climbing, one falling, both part of a single motion. Scientists describe such phenomena as energy transfer, but its truest name might be grace. The silt beneath your feet holds the weight of continents. Each grain is the memory of erosion, carried through centuries, polished by motion, surrendered without regret. Geologists estimate that nearly 20 billion tons of sediment reach the oceans every year. That's the planet renewing itself, stone transformed into soil mountain, into delta, past into present. The same cycle shapes you. Experiences worn smooth by time. Lessons settling into quiet understanding. Erosion, when viewed closely, is simply the art of becoming soft. At the edge of the river's mouth, sound changes character. The steady murmur of current becomes a pulse echoing inside the chest of the listener. Audio engineers studying natural frequencies have found that low continuous tones between 40 and 60 hertz synchronize with the human heartbeat. Perhaps that is why people fall asleep near water. Their bodies tune themselves to the rhythm of the world. As you listen, now notice how your breath and pulse align with an unseen tide, slow, steady, infinite. Light, too, behaves differently here. At dawn, when the sun rises just above the horizon, its rays bend through layers of mist and moisture, scattering wavelengths into golds and silvers. Physicists call this my scattering. But to those who witness it, it feels like the planet awakening under divine touch. For a few seconds, the river becomes mirror, and sky becomes river, each reflecting the other's heart. The boundary dissolves completely. Duality ceases. If you were to scoop a handful of this water, you would hold the history of the earth. Oxygen, once exhaled by ancient forests. Minerals dissolved from forgotten mountains. Even traces of stardust, the remnants of meteorites, dissolved in rainfall. Chemists have confirmed that isotopes of iron and nickel found in river sediments match those in cosmic debris. The universe, it seems, flows back into itself through rivers, closing the loop between heaven and soil. To sleep is to float in that loop, to rest inside the same cycle of creation that birthed galaxies. Sailors once said that every river carries a voice, and that if you follow it long enough, you will hear where you belong. Today, scientists mapping underwater acoustics find that ocean currents carry low-frequency vibrations for thousands of miles, guiding whales through the dark. It's not folklore, it's physics. The planet hums softly, and its creatures answer. You are one of them, guided by sounds you cannot hear, but can feel a pull toward peace, a direction without destination. The oldest river on Earth, the Finca in Australia, has been flowing for nearly 350 million years. Before mountains rose, before birds learned to fly, before trees reached for light, it was already moving, already singing through stone. That continuity humbles every scientist who studies it. It means that for all our progress, we are temporary visitors in a conversation much older than language. And yet the river still speaks to us, not in words, but in patience. In a world obsessed with hurry, its lesson is simple. Time is not an enemy. It is the current that carries you home. If you stood at its banks right now, you would hear only wind and water and the faint rhythm of your own pulse. You would realize that stillness isn't the absence of motion. It's perfect alignment with it. Sleep is that alignment. When your thoughts finally move with the current instead of against it, peace arrives effortlessly. Rivers evaporate. Clouds drift. Rain falls, and the cycle begins anew. The atoms that make up this breath, this heartbeat, this moment, will someday join the sea rise as mist and fall again on another mountain. Nothing is lost. Everything returns. That is the first and final law of the earth continuity, without conclusion. The same principle governs your dreams. You drift, you dissolve, you return, restored, born. So tonight, as you lie listening to this invisible flow, imagine the river within you, the bloodstream carrying oxygen like tiny boats, the breath rising and falling like tides, the mind widening into ocean. The scientific and the sacred are not separate. They are the same current seen from different banks. To fall asleep is to surrender to both. Let go now. The water knows the way. The world is still turning softly, endlessly. And somewhere beneath that motion, the earth breathes once more, slow, deep, eternal. Sleep inside that breath. You are home.